All right, so here we are. Starting from yesterday, what we did here, we're going to start with our background. I imported a decent photograph. Remember, I said the higher the resolution the picture, the better the result of your high pass and gradient mapping. But I just captured this one with my computer, so the resolution is pretty low, but it will still be sort of effective. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a duplicate layer. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. You can control click by right-clicking on here and say duplicate layer, or this little drop-down menu here will give you all the different layers here. So I can say duplicate layer here, or the good old-fashioned way of doing it is to go under layer here, and this is also a way you can make a duplicate layer or things under your menu here. All right, I have my background copy right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a high-pass filter out of this layer. So I have my background copy. I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to show all my menu items here. Under Other, it says High Pass. So I'm going to go to High Pass. I can adjust my pixel depth here. What this is doing is it's finding the pixel edges of the contrast points in my picture. You can experiment with all different levels. I'm going to set mine. Let's set ours at 3 today. And you can see here where it's not really about color. It's just about having gray and then, again, those contrast lines. So I'm going to say OK. So here I have this high pass filter. It's on top. It's not really doing me any good until I go to soft light. And now all of a sudden, before, after, right? Suddenly what it does is it sharpens up that picture dramatically. And again, if you had a very high contrast, or I'm sorry, a very high resolution picture, it would be much more sharp as well. Also, you want to look out for that as your hair recedes here, that horrendous light that's happening on top of my head there. Beware. Don't get old. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create some more character to this picture. So you can, I actually jumped right to the high pass filter. Something you might want to do is you might want to crop your picture. All right, we talked about cropping yesterday. You can use your marquee tool and crop out a area of this picture that you want and go to Image Crop. And what that does, it acts like a pair of scissors and it chops the picture out. The only problem with this is that you can make a very strange and odd size with this that will not fit into a standard picture frame. So you might want to make it more of a standard picture. So I'm going to step backwards. And instead of using this tool, I'm going to go to my cropping tool, which is this tool right here. You'll see I have some parameters at the top here. So I can set that to like 10 inches wide and 8 inches high. And 72 resolution is for screen. If you were going to print this out, you do like 150. But I'm going to just look at this on the screen. And I know that my picture already is smaller than 8 by 10. Say it's 8 by 5. So I'm not going to make it larger because that will make it look pixelated. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to go 7 by 5. So I'm going to crop out that black corner over there. Move this down just a smidge there. You can use the arrow keys on my keyboard. I'm going to hit my check mark, and I've cropped my picture. All right, so I have that going for me. I'm going to go down to my layer menu here, and I'm going to use my layer mask for levels, making sure that it's on the top and not between these two. I want the levels to be on the top. I'm going to adjust my levels just to sort of increase the intensity of this. Unfortunately, as I said, with this particular picture, I had an overhead light here, and it's reflecting horribly off of my forehead and the top of my nose. So I would probably go back into the studio and reshoot this picture so that the lights were more parallel to my face, and it would de-emphasize that shininess of my forehead. All right, so this is pretty ready to go in that sense. But let's add some more magical things to it. Remember, this curtain here looks really awful, so I want to blur out that curtain. So I'm going to go back to my background level. I'm going to make another duplicate layer. I'm going to say OK. And then maybe I'll just label this so I can take a look at it here. I'm going to call it Blur. And this one, I'm going to call it High Pass, just so you can look at those levels there. All right, I'm going to select my blur layer. I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to go to Gaussian Blur. I'm going to blur it. I don't want to blur it too much because it's going to look weird if the background is super blurry and then the picture is sharp. But I'm going to go maybe 3.5 here. I'm going to say OK. But then the problem is I want to expose the background picture below, so I'm going to use a layer mask. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to select my black paintbrush. I'm going to flip-flop my color to black. I'm going to make sure I'm on my background here. I'm going to soften my brush all the way to 0. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger using the parentheses keys. I'm going to paint with black right down the center. All right, and actually I liked it better. I'm going to undo that last one because I like my ear to be sort of out of focus. So all I did here, you can see over on this side, is I blackened out the middle so it's blocking the blur layer and it's showing the background underneath. And then again, there's my high pass, which is resting on top of all of this. All right, if I want, see how when I turn off the high pass, the background is blurrier? So maybe what I'm going to do is go to my high pass layer, add a layer mask as well. Again, use that black, but instead of using it on the center, I'm going to use it out here. And look at the way it nicely blurred that curtain there. Like so. And then up here, I'm going to make a smaller brush. And I'm going to paint this out here. In this little piece right here. And then I'm going to go back to my blur layer. I'm going to flip-flop my color. And I'm going to block this out. Oh, hang on, I'm on the wrong layer. Let me step backwards. Step backward, step backward, step backward. Go here. I want to make sure I'm on my filter layer. And I'm going to paint this out. Black. All right, so that'll take care of just a little bit of that blurriness. So that's sort of the basics of what we did yesterday. Now, the last thing you can do is if you want to add a little bit of magic to this, you can use your gradient map. All right, and what the gradient map is I want to make sure I'm on my layer right below levels here. All right, so I don't want to be on my levels because it's going to throw the layer on top. I'm going to go right below it. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say gradient map, which is down here at the bottom. All right, and what that does is it is going to create all these different color combinations here, where essentially it's replacing your darkest values and your shadows, like your black point with one color and your white point with another color, and then it's filling in all the gaps in between. So like in here, the purple is my black point, the orange is my light point, and it's filling it in. All right, and this looks really cool, but the problem is that, again, it's covering my other pictures, so I want to actually lighten that effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my properties here, and I'm going to say color dodge, and it's going to dodge out that color a little bit, and then I'm going to turn the opacity down here to, I don't know, like 26%. All right, so what that did was it actually added a little bit of color to my picture here. I can turn this on and off. All right, it gives it sort of a vintagey look, or, you know, again, we talk about Instagram or some different apps that you might have for your computer. It sort of changes that look just a little bit. And the neat thing is while you have this layer map on here, you can try out different colors and try different variations because the different combinations change. And you'll see, like, if you have a picture that is really contrasty, you can adjust that contrast by putting a little bit of black and white on top of it, and it boosts the contrast of your picture, so if you want it to be really sort of blown out. Or you can flip-flop these colors, so I can put black on one end and white on the other. And what it actually does is it grays out your picture. All right, so it makes it look very washed out. All right, but I'm going to go back to that one. I think looks pretty good. All right, so that's my gradient map on top. One other thing you can do is, like here, the highlight is on my forehead, so that's sort of where we're being brought to. I want to bring the highlight down here towards my face. So I'm going to go down here to my background. I'm going to make another duplicate layer, like so. I'm going to call this one lighting. Here we go. L-I-G-H-T. Oops. All right, and what I can do is I'm going to go to my filter again. I'm going to say render, and I'm going to say lighting effects. All right, and in here, I'm just going to use my omnidirectional light. You can adjust this light to be more or less intense. Oops. Like so. All right, and I can also move its point. I'm going to move the point of this one right by my eye right here, and I might turn down the intensity of this light to, like, to 20. All right. And so what that's going to do is it's going to add just a little bit of an emphasis right on my face here. But you can see that it's pretty harsh, it's pretty dark. So I'm going to go to luminosity, and that's going to change it. You can see just a very subtle change in here. And I'm also going to turn down the opacity of this layer as I did before. And again, it's not super, you know, when you look at it, it's not super available. But here you can see, like, it really darkens the top and the bottom here a little bit and adds a little bit more concentration and focus right into my face. All right, then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a vignette around the outside of my picture so that it darkens the edges. So again, I'm going to go to the level right below the top one here. I'm actually just going to make a new layer, which is this little button down here, or I can say new layer here at the top. So there it is right here. I'm going to use my paint bucket, which is here underneath the gradient tool. I'm going to flip-flop this to black, and I'm going to fill that with black. All right, don't panic. It looks like it's gone, but it'll come back. All right, I'm going to put a layer mask on this, so this is my layer mask button. I'm going to go back to my gradient tool, like so. And for this one, I'm going to select this gradient. You can use any of these that appeal to you, whatever you think is most appropriate, the circle or the line here. Make sure I'm on my layer mask. I'm going to start in the middle, or kind of where I think my face is. I'm going to pull to the left, or the right here. I'm going to hold on my shift key and it'll make a straight line. Depending on how far you pull this is how far the gradient mask will go. And you can see here how it masks it. So see how I put that very dramatic edge right in the middle. All right, if you want to bring the face back just a little bit more, I can use my paintbrush again. I can make it a little bit wider, and I can just paint my face back just a little bit. So you can see here in the map, it just sort of added a little bit of black to it, but it sort of brings out my face. So that way, it adds a very dramatic effect. And if I want it to be less, obviously I can lower the opacity of that layer a little bit. But it just looks, it just looks like a much warmer picture. So here, this is before, like so. It's very cold and sort of stale. And then it looks much warmer and much softer when it's finished. Okay? You know, and even with these colors, you can mess. Like right here, this background fill is black. If I go back here with my paint bucket, and I click on my color swatch down here, I can change it to like a very dark blue here. You can barely see the difference, but then if I fill this, it just adds a little bit of a blue cast to it. You know, that black really sort of mutes out all color that's in the background, so I try to stay away from black. But you can see how the blue made this curtain just a really nice, kind of a cooler blue, cooler background color, like a violet. And that's all you got to do. So that would be the